Welcome to the Funnel Reboot Podcast with your host, Glenn Schmeltzley. Let's get into today's show.
Hey, Glenn here, and welcome back to Funnel Reboot, where you're among good friends with fellow analytically minded marketers. When it comes to initiatives that humans undertake, we only need to look at a few to see how they can fail spectacularly. One example is the iconic Sydney Opera House, which came from a competition won by a young Danish architect. The board who'd commissioned him to build it was told it would be completed by 1963. But things were so chaotic and so behind schedule that he had to be fired. It is truly a marvel of design, but it's also a poster child for poor projects because it didn't open until 1973. Another example that came out of a desire for researching high-energy particles, which would potentially solve fundamentals of physics, the US government set out to build something called the Superconducting Super Collider. A site in Texas was chosen for this, but after 6 years of tunneling, they had only reached a fraction of the 88 kilometers that it was supposed to be. The project was finally canceled at a cost of $2 billion. One last example. In 1998, NASA's Mars Climate Observer traveled about 200 million miles. It was about to start researching the red planet, but the software that set its orbital altitude had been given imperial units instead of metric units. And so when the code ran into this error, it caused the spacecraft to come in too steep, and it destroyed a probe worth $328 million. These failures are so huge, it's bound to bring out an inner cynic in us. It's natural to pose questions to those that lead these projects, like, what were they thinking? I don't scoff at people who head these projects up because I experienced something in my youth that showed me how humans can sabotage missions. When I was 15, I attended a camp that took us through some exercises where they were trying to show us aspects of teamwork. I already thought I knew what teamwork was. Of course, any teenager thinks they know everything, but I was not prepared for what awaited me. There were some older senior counselors, guys in their 20s, named Leo and Bob, and they were in charge of this exercise. And we left the camp, which was in rural New York State, and drove several hours in a van. The van crossed into Pennsylvania and left the highway, then onto a side road, then onto a dirt road, and then finally to a clearing somewhere in the backwoods. It was early afternoon that day, and Leo dropped us off. That left 4 guys my age and me, with the other counselor, Bob, to go for a walk for about 30 minutes, while Leo stayed back in the van. We got to a clearing in the forest, and at that point, Bob stood facing us and told us about the exercise we were about to do. He said, "You are stranded in a forest a few miles from a pickup van, which contains food and medical supplies. You have to locate that help, and it will signal its location by a horn blast every 15 minutes until sundown. You'll succeed in your mission if you reach the van by then." He didn't tell us what would happen if we didn't. So all of this seemed doable, until Bob said, "One of your team is incapacitated due to an injury." He then closed his eyes, fell to the ground, and never said a word. It's hard for me to say what the next couple of hours was like, because we tried to find the van carrying this 180-pound man through the brush. All of a sudden, minute things became important, like recalling the way we'd come, or how do you lash branches together to form a stretcher? Or whom among us should decide which way we would go? Now, each time we heard that horn far off, we got a little bit more exhausted and acted a bit more panicked. knowing that the horn blasts would stop. Well, at that point, I knew for myself I was just going to resort to screaming in the dark. And the way we interacted in every way, from rational to tense to hysterical, happened that day. At several points, I was convinced we'd never get to the van. But by some miracle, we reached it just before sunset. And each of us boys had time during the trip back to reflect on how we'd worked as a team. And I no longer wonder why people have difficulty collaborating on projects, especially projects where the stakes get high. And my guest also believes it's our fault that projects fail as they do. And she's got principles she teaches that make everyone clear on the task that we're all undertaking, which significantly improves our odds of success. She is founder and CEO of Spring 2 Innovation, an award-winning design thinking agency. She's also a TEDx and a Tech Vistage speaker. She uses her 25 years of experience to work on innovative projects, both in the public sector and with private organizations. So let's go now to Ottawa to speak with Nilufer Erdebil. Nil Erdebil, welcome to Funnel Reboot.
Thank you for having me on board.
Yeah, I'm really glad that we can be talking today about something that I think marketers are we're aware of, but I don't think that we do such a good job at putting it into practice. And we're going to talk about deeper clarity. So what I'd like to do is just understand, first off, can you tell me in general what you think teams of all kinds are getting wrong when they begin a project or when they begin trying to design something that's going to be, read by their users or their customers or their prospects?
Yeah, I think, if you don't mind, can I say two things?
Yep.
So the first thing is making sure that everybody on the team understands what problem they're trying to solve. And so having the team completely aligned on what it is that they're trying to do. And that means every single person on the team being able to explain or articulate in the same way what the challenge is in maybe a sentence or two. And then the second thing is putting themselves in that end user's perspective. And so whoever they're creating their products for or their services for is thinking about things through that end user perspective.
All right. Now, as marketers, we're supposed to be thinking about our customers. We're supposed to be the voice of the customer internally. I used to think that we did this extremely well. And then I came across some of your work and the research that you've done. And I realized it's beguilingly hard to be empathetic with our customers. Can you tell me a little bit about what the repercussions are of not nailing that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the biggest repercussion is working really hard and creating solutions that don't really work with the customer. And so spending millions of dollars on solutions and producing them, taking it to market, and then not having as many customers as you want, or not having the customers enjoy the experience of the service or the product, and so they don't buy as much, or you get a lot of calls into your service center because it's difficult to use, or they're returning products because they're not understanding it because that end user perspective wasn't considered right from the get-go.
Okay, there's considering and there's considering. And I do know what you mean about not nailing the needs of the customer. You and I have both worked with technology companies, and some of them are just famous for coming up to engineering solutions for non-existent problems, or for solutions that are much harder than the customer is ready to tackle. One that I'm thinking of right now, and you mentioned it in your TED Talk, is about a shower that was in a hotel somewhere. Can you tell our listeners kind of how we can get it wrong when we're not really understanding where the customer is coming from?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the reason that I got into what I do is from my experiences in technology and
Mm,
being a software engineer in those teams and creating amazing solutions that are extremely scalable. And then when it goes to market, not having customers for those products and having to cancel those products, and even worse, having those companies going out of business. And so, oftentimes, the story I do tell is about an experience a number of years ago at a hotel where I went to go take a shower and my back was hurting. And I was looking at the shower thinking, okay, what do I have to pull or twist to turn on the shower? And I turned on the water, I got it at the right temperature, and then I started twisting and pulling and pushing things. And it was about 30 seconds in when I realized there's actually a sign on the shower on how to turn on the shower. And this was the first time that
no.
I'd seen it. Yeah. And it was honestly the first time that I'd seen it and in a hotel before. And I laughed. I was so fascinated by this and thinking, oh my God, who needs a sign to turn on a shower? Fast forward as I twisted something out that wasn't supposed to come out and twisted it back in. I looked at the sign. Yeah, I know. I'm looking at the sign and I'm thinking, okay, clearly I need this. And so I started looking at the sign and I'm laughing the whole time at myself and at the situation. And I looked at it and it said, turn water on. Okay, the water's been running for a while, and then it says pull tub spout in a downward motion. And in my head, the tub spout's the thing that comes out of the wall, and it,
Right.
yeah. And I'm not a shower expert, although by now I might be. And so I pull the shower tub spout downwards, and nothing's happening. And I'm looking at the wall, and I don't see any grooves in the wall for the tub spout to come down or up. And so then I keep reading because I see there's more writing, and there's a sign that says for Service Express, dial 0. And I'm looking around.
Right.
Yeah, where's that bathroom phone that some hotels used to have? And my cell phone's in the other part of the
Out of
room.
reach.
Yeah.
Sure.
I was there with some friends, and so I thought it might be even more embarrassing to have to go out there and tell them I need to
I
call.
can't work the shower.
Yeah, I can't work the shower, and then I'm thinking, okay, well, if I call someone, it's going to take at least 10 minutes for them to come, and yeah. So then I look back at this sign, and it has a diagram on it, and so I studied the diagram, for real, studied it because I'm like, there's something going on that I'm missing here, and
But
there's
it's not a picture. It's like some abstract schematic.
yeah, sorry, yes, it's not a picture, it's a schematic, and I'm thinking, I'm an engineer, I should be able to get this. It's a schematic. And I am laughing that whole time. Yeah, and so I looked at the schematic, and there's something in the downspout that is looks like it might come down, and so it involves me putting my fingers into the running water to feel for something to pull down. And
Wow.
the whole thought of putting my hands in there is a little disturbing because I don't know what's in
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
And so I managed to reach in and figure something in there that I could hold on to pull down on, and I did, and it turned it on. But that whole time, I'm laughing and thinking to myself, not only does this shower have instructions written and a very nice sign with a lovely um, figure on it, but it also has third line support.
Yeah.
And I'm laughing. I'm like thinking, does the hotel not have better things to do than to answer calls on how to turn on the shower, which probably happens very regularly because the people that go in there only go in there maybe once
Yeah.
ever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. or they're coming off of a long plane flight, or like you, they have a sore back. They're just really interested in getting the water going and getting on with it.
Yeah, early morning meeting. I mean, that's
Yeah.
gotta be the worst.
Oh, so someone, I guess this dispels the myth of needing to just go with our gut, because there was probably a team, several teams. There was the design team, and then there was the procurement team of the hotel.
Yeah.
But that whole chain of people, without, doing the things that you talk about with deeper clarity, they preferred a ultra modern, sleek shower head over something that would give you a good customer experience.
Yeah.
And so I guess we just can't trust our gut.
Yeah, and it's fascinating because yeah, it's the two departments that are also conflicting, where procurement's trying to look out for finances as well, and then
Right.
the service design folks and the people that are selecting it are looking more for aesthetics and not necessarily usability. And the fascinating thing is, last year I was picking out a shower for my own home. Yeah, and you think I would learn, but I went with the recommendation of my design person, and I paid for it. I got home and I'm like, I never asked how to turn it on. And I think it's for my own home. And so once I learn it, it should be fine. But I think we don't do enough of that end to end experience, even for ourselves, until we're in those situations. And so for businesses to do it, it takes even more thinking ahead and more process and focus on going through the experience as an end user. And some companies do this extremely well,
Yep.
and others could definitely learn and really benefit from looking at things from that end user perspective, end to end.
Yeah. There's much there. And these are things that begin right at the inception of whatever the venture is. So you make it clear that we have to not only think about our customers, we have to try and prevent them from, like in your case, getting shower PTSD. We have to involve them, like to actually talk with them, or some other way of interacting with them, or at the very least, looking at our analytics when they're on our website and trying to interpret what they're saying. You point out that basically is a function of the team that has to make the thing, is that they have to understand what their customer needs from them, and to get that invaluable input. Kind of, if they don't have it, it's arguable that they're not even really functioning as a team. Would you say that?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And and it's my preference is to actually talk to customers.
Hmm.
And there's usually at least one person in your organization talking to the customer. It's also a matter of taking that information in a consistent way and then bringing it back to the rest of the organization so that everybody can benefit from that.
Now, we've got people like Steve Jobs, who were famous for saying that customers aren't good at articulating what their feelings are when you ask them about something, and
Yeah.
that you have to kind of step in and offer something. I'm wondering if you can shed some light on maybe what Neil's view is of how we make sure that we make sure that they're asking, or we're asking the questions that are actually solving the right problem, because they'll tell us all sorts of things that are bothering them, but maybe they won't pay for those things, or maybe those don't have anything to do with what your function is. How do we uh, how do we get at these articulated and unarticulated feelings when, let's be frank, if we even ask ourselves what our own feelings are on something, we have a hard time understanding why we do what we do ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I think what's really helpful to organizations is how they articulate the questions and what questions that they're asking their customers. And I
Okay.
think this is where we're really strong in, is coming in and helping them articulate what that challenge is that they want to be working on, and how to articulate that to the end customers. And so taking that time with them to understand how they want to ask the questions and what questions they want to ask, And then as we talk to customers, being able to ask additional questions to get at what the customers really mean. Because sometimes customers have a way of saying what they want or what they need or what their challenges are. And they require a little bit more prying into rather than making assumptions. And that's a little bit easier to do with a third party than with folks that are really familiar with their tools.
Yes.
And then it's also prototyping and testing with those customers and asking them questions like, how much would you pay for this? And, or is this useful? What are your expectations? What are your measures of success for a solution or a product
Right.
like this? And really listening. And I think that's the best advice that I can give organizations is as you talk to your customers, listen and really understand what they're saying to figure out how that fits in with the products and services that your teams are creating and be able to provide that to everyone in the organization. And so when we look at the shower example, if procurement also had that information in terms of thinking about things from that end user perspective, might they have made different decisions?
Right. That's an excellent case. And this is where we can say, yes, yes, listen, we pay lip service to it, but it's a complex problem because you have multiple parties. In that case, it's a business to business sale. So you have to find out where the differences are between what procurement wants and maybe what the folks crafting the guest experience want, what the maybe housekeeping teams who have to maintain this or clean it. These are all different parties and they don't necessarily align. And we have to try and tease that out. Do you also think we have to look at our customers? Sometimes they will say things, but they'll do something else.
Oh,
I know in the case of, let's say, smoking cessation products that, over the past decades, we've moved from products that, yes, would, help someone find their way off of cigarettes, but they've changed remarkably because they've gone to things that are actually closer to what a person who's been in the habit of smoking is doing. So they're looking at the habit, not necessarily looking at the end goal. Because while somebody will say, yeah, I'd like to quit smoking, that's not when they're really in danger of lapsing. They're in danger of lapsing when they're standing at the place where they always used to take a smoke break with their hands not holding on to anything and being, antsy about the fact, hey, I know my brain is telling me right now, I really want to have a smoke.
yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And so it's, I think that's a matter of looking at what part of the journey do we want to be looking at and what journeys we want to look at that the customer is going through to figure out better insights into them to see the types of solutions we can create. And so you just selected an amazing journey is the people that really have decided to quit and then are getting those cravings and urges and getting into their heads at that point and looking at what they're saying and what they're doing, what they're thinking, what they're feeling. And that's when we can really get some true insights. And so, yeah, trying to figure out what journey we should be looking at. Is it the people that are thinking about quitting, the people that have just quit, or those that are tempted? And
Right.
what is
Yeah.
tempting them? And what's going on in their heads as folks are being tempted to think through how we can help them. What are some things that the organization can do if it's in a work environment, or what can they do to help themselves to be able to find other things to, or other people around them to be able to support them.
Well put. So it makes all the more case for what you said at the top, where we all have to get um, unified on a common objective and without digging in like we have in these examples into exactly what journey and what user and whether there are multiple stakeholders in that user org, we really aren't able to nail a particular unified objective that we can have. And it's no wonder why things go off the rails. I want to get more into that communication that we need to do. But before we do that, we're going to take a short break. I want to pause for a PSA about all the people, places, and concepts mentioned in shows, along with timestamps marking various topics that we go through. You might want to catch those afterwards. Not while you're listening, because you're driving or cooking or doing something else. Fortunately, you can get to all these in the show notes via a digest email that comes out with each show. To subscribe, go to the Funnel Reboot website and use the sign-up form that pops up. Let's get back to our guest. So, Neil, one of the things that I've heard you saying before, and I found this a particularly depressing stat, was something from McKinsey, and they were looking at how people divide up their work week, and they were using it to express to us how well or how poorly we communicate with each other when we're trying to work on something together. They said that out of the entire work week for most professionals and executives, only 14% of their time is spent on internal communication. Is that right? Because if it is, that would be a very hard, it'd be very hard to squeeze within your 14% of your week how to get good clarity and alignment with other teammates on what you're doing.
Yeah, it's a staggeringly low number. And it's fascinating because I was just talking to a colleague that mentioned one of their friends actually communicates to their whole organization once a week in terms of what's happened in the organization as they're growing rapidly. And I was shocked by that, pleasantly shocked that they spend a little bit of time every week to message their entire organization. And then I caught myself thinking, wait a minute.
Yeah.
Why is that standing out so much in my head? And oh yes, maybe I should be doing more of that as well.
Right. But it's remarkable in how rare it is.
Yeah.
And the question is, can we do better than once a week?
Oh yeah. I mean, absolutely. I think a lot of the time that we do get called in as well into organizations is to help organizations understand one another within their team, but also within other teams. So
Okay.
it's really fascinating because oftentimes we work with other teams in an organization or other partners in other organizations, and we assume we know what they're doing. But when we get the teams to sit down and explain to one another their challenges and the types of things that they're struggling with, their expectations, their measures of success, their fears, it's actually quite surprising to the other team and quite energizing once they understand each other at that deeper level and have that deeper clarity of one another as well too. And so I think that internal communication is lacking in so many organizations, and it's not necessarily that people don't want to communicate. It's that time isn't put in place and that structure isn't put in place. And so let's say you can't do once a week. What are some things that you can do within organizations to get that internal deeper clarity as well too?
Yeah. So a couple of things there. That's a lot. When we've got multiple teams, one would think that there are workflows that dribble from one to the other. And so if you don't know what the team after you is doing with the information, let's say that you pump out, right? I'm thinking like what marketing analysts are doing, feeding information to marketing campaign people. Well, if you don't understand their workflow, then what you give them, if it's just the way you think it should be arranged, it may not at all be helpful and may be completely pointless. So that's concerning. But the other thing that you said there is that there should be management structures. It's the responsibility of management to set up those, let's say, feedback loops or chances for interaction that get this type of communication going and making it habitual. Would you say that?
I totally agree. I think many organizations don't put that at the forefront. Oftentimes, an organization, if they're smaller, are really focused on the sales and marketing aspect of it, and then, of course, getting that product out there. Um, but the feedback loop isn't there. To understand one another and to understand the end customers and bring it into development, and then to have development be able to let marketing and sales know what's on their time horizon in terms of what they're developing as well. And so that communication aspect is really a challenge, and that initial structure hasn't been put in place in terms of process and in terms of spending time on it regularly. And so that's when we get called into a lot of organizations as well, is
Mm-hmm.
because they want to put in place that feedback loop for customer input, and then also for getting information from product development into sales and marketing, and ultimately into the customer's hands.
Great. There are good ways to, figure out how to get people talking, and we've got virtual now, so that's helpful in some cases. But I think that listeners might wonder, okay, well, are we just getting together for the sake of talking? You talk about how when this happens and teams are actually like digging deep into what they can be doing to work together, that they end up reframing how they see things. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, the reframing part is really essential, because I think most of us are used to doing things in the same way. And so, how do you help people see things that they didn't necessarily see before in order to be able to reframe what they need to be doing? And so, we spend a lot of time helping our customers understand their end users or one another. And so, that discovery phase, and then from the information that we've gathered, the new insights, being able to pull back and look at whether or not we're solving the right problem, or if there's some tweaks that need to be done to that challenge and how we articulate it before we go on and come up with ideas and do that prototyping and testing. Because oftentimes there's new insights that help us better articulate what we're supposed to do, or even better scope out what we're supposed to be doing. And I think I had really great experiences in my IT days on this, where we were prototyping and testing products internally. And
Yep.
one of our partners recommended that we bring in external customers. And at first I was like, well, why would we do that? Until we brought them in and they told us, oh no, we'd never pay for that feature. That's useless to us. And then they started telling us a few features that would be really useful to them that would take us no time to develop.
Right. But we're probably not on your roadmap.
No, not even close, because we're not in their business. But because they came in and took a look at what we were developing and gave us those insights, then we were better able to reframe what we were doing and deliver what they actually wanted. And so right away, our product had traction because we spent
Nice.
that time reframing what we were doing for our customers, and that's huge. And it's taking that time to look at the information and providing opportunities for that reframing, because oftentimes we're just trying to make sure that products are getting out the door, and the marketing and sales is all geared up. But very infrequently do we pause and think about, okay, is this the right problem we're solving? What information and insights, new information and insights, are we getting from the market in order to figure out if we're still on the right track?
I think a lot of people will initially feel uncomfortable when they are reframing. They'll wonder, why am I questioning the things that have been considered best practices, or things that I've always done, and hey, nothing bad has happened so far. But well, you pointed out one area, and it was in an example I recall of. It was a government organization, and they were looking at trying to disseminate some information on a new process that they were doing. And to roll it out, they needed to do a road show. And the road show involved many working teams across many cities. And it was literally hundreds and hundreds of hours of holding all of these workshops to get that information out there. And I would hazard a guess that that's not sustainable for any little thing that you need. But if you're in tight contact with your internal and external customers on a frequent basis, you may not need such a monumental rollout,
Yeah.
because you're always finding out stuff, and you're, in an agile way, updating your plans and making course corrections, not these, we're going 5 years in this direction and then we're going to make a hard 180-degree turn and come the other direction.
Yeah, absolutely. That consistent realigning is vital in organizations to save them time in the long run. But it's one of the more difficult things for organizations to do is to continuously look for insights and feedback in order to figure out if they're still on the same page. And that's one of the things that we want to make sure that we're doing consistently is making sure as things are changing with customers, with the environment, that we're understanding those changes and understanding how our customers are changing, and then bringing that information back and reframing and realigning continuously so that it's much more seamless rather than a major project of doing a refresh or a completely overhaul of the product or the service itself. And something interesting too that we focus on with our training especially is getting people to experience things from that end user perspective. And oftentimes in organizations, we're doing things the same way, talking to the same people. And so the best way I find to help people reframe and understand the importance of that end user perspective is to relay things that they might be doing or experiencing in their personal lives and then bringing it back into their work environments. And
Yeah.
so we talked about the shower example. I find traveling is always fascinating to see things from different perspectives and to see some of the things that might be challenges coming in from a different type of a culture, or to see some of the challenges if you don't understand the writing. And so,
Yes.
yeah, it's always fascinating to go into a country where I don't understand the language and trying to go through the process of things that I would really easily be able to do here, and experiencing some of the challenges. And I think that's where the beginner's mindset comes in when we're discovering our end users and their journeys and then bringing back that information in order to make our products and services even better.
I love that. And I mean, we can even look within our own language, how
Yeah.
it's what someone else is doing isn't necessarily the way that we're doing it, but
Yeah.
that is another valid way of doing it. And the funniest example I can think of is accents, right?
Oh,
I
yeah.
don't have an accent. Everybody else has an accent.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Until you
And
travel south or
yeah,
yeah,
and you hear people talking in other accents and they say, "Hey," in their own way, they say, "You sound funny." Like,
yeah.
no, you sound funny. So yeah, we do have to kind of get ourselves uh, out of our own little cubicle and get on that. And I think one of the ways that we should really focus on this is in success measurements and coming up with them. It's something that it's like an accent. We can see when we're looking at someone else, we can say, oh, they should measure their success at doing that these 3 ways. But it's not easy to do for ourselves. And you advocate for having like a coach or an outside facilitator who can help and who maybe doesn't have the biases that you have,
Yeah.
that they should be involved in helping suggest what those measures are.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's measures for yourself, but it's also getting at the measures that your customers have or your end clients or your partners have too, because a lot of the time they're going to be quite different than what you think they are for them. And so, yeah, getting down to their top 2 or 3 measures of success in order to make sure that you're delivering on those as and for each type of customer too. You have different types of customers, and so then also aligning that with what does success look like for your project, for your product or service. And it really does help to have an outsider perspective. I've been fortunate enough to do some facilitation myself as well for organizations where I've had really close friends and really smart people that we've run the exercises through and the activities. And even they had a really hard time putting themselves in that end user's perspective to come up with those measures of success. Yeah. And so having someone to constantly pull back and make sure that you're getting at the measures of success. And if you're doing it internally, to have that continuous perspective, it's really helpful to have that third party so that you can get the things that you might be missing. And oftentimes in product management, in marketing, in sales, we think we know our customers well. And then when a third party comes in and asks some different questions, it might help you see some of the things that you haven't been seeing before, which also means opportunities for innovation, for creativity, and hitting some areas that you hadn't thought of before, so that you are getting more of that market share, you're getting more customers, better loyalty, and overall growth of your organizations. And I think that's what most organizations want, is to grow their organization, have more customers, have more stickiness with their customers. And the best way to do that is to get at some additional insights that you might not have had before. And that's where we come in and help organizations get to that additional insight.
Right. Yeah, despite, and you are right, many of us do think that we're on top of our game with understanding our customers, but empirical evidence seems to say the opposite, because look at the number of product failures, look at the number of marketing campaigns that are pulled after a short while before they're even through their natural expected lifespan. We aren't doing as well as we should be doing. And, the tenure of marketing executives and sales executives is very short, which shows that there's people at the C-level who are displeased with the way that we're currently doing things. So we ought to look at the measures you suggest, because we're clearly not on top of it yet. Nil, we've run through, my goodness, we've drifted through like design thinking, and we've drifted through organizational behavior, communications. There's one other area I wanted to ask you about, and it's technologically related. We're in 2024, and AI is, being mentioned everywhere. Do you see there being any part that things like generative AI can play to help us in getting better at this?
Short answer is yes. I think the real value is going to come for AI applying deeper clarity and design thinking themselves. Because at the end of the day, businesses are there, technology is there to make people's lives better. And we need to fully understand what the challenge is that we want to solve for our customers. And I think all businesses are going to have AI in them in the very near future, even if they don't realize it. I think technology and AI is going to become very prominent very soon. And so they're going to need some help, the AI companies, to understand what challenges really need to be solved that customers are willing to pay for. In terms of AI within design thinking or better understanding customers and reframing, I think real value comes from actually talking to customers and being able to ask additional questions. And so I think the discovery component still has to be with people, but coming up with ideas and maybe creating prototypes, I think AI is really helpful in order to provide some suggestions, additional suggestions, and then also be able to synthesize large amounts of information. I
Oh,
know,
yes.
yeah, I know for us, we work with a lot of customers, customers where we end up talking to their customers and getting tons of information. And before AI, it would take a long time to look at that information, synthesize it. And so, how can we use AI technology to be able to synthesize that information? Um, and then the other challenge is that we as humans are sometimes biased in terms of the groups that we talk to, the types of information we're looking at, how we're analyzing it, and AI does add additional bias as well too. And so selecting the right AI is going to be really important to make sure that we're not adding in additional biases as we're looking at people and our customers. And then the other thing too is customers change quite rapidly sometimes, and so AI models might not be able to keep up with that. At least they're not right now. And so, how do you filter in new insights that
Yeah,
AI might be able to help you pick up later
right.
on?
Or just realize we cannot lean on it for truly original
Mm.
notions. That is something that we're just going to have to use the human creative spark to do.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, it does provide springboards for more creativity. I know I've had a number of colleagues use it to help create some icebreaker activities or make
Mhm.
recommendations on them. But
Mhm.
it's at the end of the day, a human has to be at the forefront of it to make sure um, it's about human connection, and I think machines are still a ways away from understanding that human connection, but there's definitely room for helping us do what we do a little bit better through recommending some stuff that we might not have thought of that other really smart people have thought of, like the prototypes. But at the end of the day, that human connection is really essential.
Yeah, no, that's a very balanced view of it. Neil, if people want to find out about the various talks that you give, the writing that you've done in your book, the other ways that you're available, where would you send them?
Yeah, I would probably, first of all, send them to our website, spring2innovation.com with a number two.
Hmm.
Um, and there they can find out information about our upcoming training. And so we have 1 day and 5 day certification on design thinking. And we also have a course on design thinking for leaders. And so, how can leaders understand the process, the methodology, and be able to support it and apply it, apply the skills to their leadership as well too, to navigate how they lead their teams and how they can support their teams even better. And we chatted a little bit about deeper clarity earlier on as well. And deeper clarity is a methodology that we have created that encompasses design thinking, but also encompasses that alignment that we talked about, making sure that everyone's on the same page, and also looking at things that might be happening in the near future. And so we bring in some strategic foresight to look for signals that our customers might be shifting, or to look for the new types of customers that we might want to have. And of course, looking at the mindset of teams as they're going through projects. And so that's all part of deeper clarity about our customers, deeper clarity about where we might want to be going next and in the near future.
That's great. Really appreciate that, Neil. Thanks again for coming on.
Thanks so much, Glenn, for having me on. Really appreciate it.
Until next time, hey, get some insight out of this so that you can make your marketing even better.
Thanks for listening. Follow the show on Twitter at Funnel Reboot. If you like what you have heard today, please consider leaving a review wherever you get your podcasts.